So you have your piece of paper and you have your writing utensil and your hymn book or your prayer book to write on. Once more, Jesus spoke to them in parables. The Gospel according to Matthew is a manual of Christian teaching addressed to the new yet old community and was written in the last part of the 1st century CE, somewhere around 70 CE. In this manual, Jesus Christ is defined as the fulfiller and the fulfillment of God's will, as prophesied in the Old Testament. Place yourselves in the community of 1st century Jews who have no personal experience of Jesus. How would you learn of him? One way is through parables. Jesus' parables were short, simple tales based on familiar things, meant to convey moral or religious lessons. In this time of civil, religious, and military conflict, it could have been dangerous to spread Jesus' critical assessment of religious authorities through plain speaking. Thus, the use of disguise in the shape of allegories, mysteries to the uninitiated, a critical claim to the knowing. Perhaps we might look at the parable of the wedding feast through 20th century eyes. Once more, Jesus spoke to them in parabolas. A parabola, a curve composed of a set of points in a plane, having their distances from a fixed point and a fixed straight line equal. In 3 short allegorical teachings, Jesus set out to define the kingdom of heaven and who may enter therein. First, the landowner who hires laborers to work in his vineyard. Second, the landowner who sought to have his harvest collected. And today, the parabola of the wedding feast. So now get your pencils ready. Picture the letter U. Draw a U on your paper. Make it a big one. This parabola encompasses an ever-expanding world of complications. Centered between the wings of the U, draw a straight line north to south. On that line, within the wings of the U, place a dot. Make it a big one. This is the kingdom of heaven. It has unlimited capacity. On the base of the curve, either to the left or the right of the straight line, place a dot. Let's call this dot number 1. Draw a line from the kingdom of heaven to dot number 1. In the parable of the wedding feast, dot number 1 represents the Jews. What happened to my... In the parable of the wedding feast, dot number 1 represents the Jews. The Jews who ignored the invitation sent by the king's servants were those who ignored the prophets who came to deliver the message of God. The people of dot 1 were of the old covenant. God had chosen for them. Can you all hear me all right? No. Mm-hmm. Well, my microphone keeps going off. All right. God had chosen for them a special relationship that he did not have with any other group of people on earth. They were to remain loyal to God, obeying him alone. If they did, he promised to bless them. If they did not, he promised they would be chastened. By strictly abiding with the old covenant, the chosen people were guaranteed a place in the kingdom of heaven. The fact that they were invited was enough. However, this invitation was never a means to salvation. Rather, it led to condemnation as the chosen people repeatedly broke the law and violated the covenant. Yet God loved his people. Was it possible for him to forge a new relationship with them? Let's leave dot number 1. Return to your picture of the parabolic curve. You've created a U with a bisecting north-south line containing one dot. On the curve of the U, you have placed one dot. On that same curve, a short distance away, place another dot. Let's call this dot number 2. Draw a line to connect the kingdom of heaven with dot number 2. This dot represents the Gentiles. If the people of dot number 1 would remain recalcitrant, then God would have to take a different approach. God claimed a new relationship with all of his people in a new covenant. Israel would be restored, sins would be finally forgiven, people would know God directly, and they would have his law written on their hearts so that they would want to obey him. God understood that if this new relationship was to succeed, the first step must come from him. And that first step was Jesus. God incarnated as the man Jesus was approachable. Jesus listened. Jesus understood his people, the good and the bad, their challenges and their gifts. Through Jesus, God invited all people to the wedding, Jew and Gentile, rich and poor, good and bad. Go back to your picture. So you have a U, a line, and a dot. On the curve of the U, you have 2 dots. Underneath the U, draw an east-west line straight across. From each dot on the curve, draw a straight line north-south to intersect the east-west line. So you're making sort of a square. And put a dot at each intersection. The space between the dots on the curve and the dots on the straight line are equal. The dots on the curve, the space, and the space between the dots on the east-west line, they're equal. It was the custom back then for the person issuing invitations to a wedding to supply the guests with the required wedding robes. The people of dot 1 and the people of dot 2 have been equally prepared. God the King has made the feast, has issued the invitation, and has supplied the robes. Will we act like the people of dot 1? Will we roll up the wedding robes, stuff them into closets, and assume that the gates of heaven will be on a motion sensor? That as we approach the gates, they will open automatically and we will blithely stroll through them, regardless of the manner in which we lived our earthly lives? Will we act like the people of dot 2? Will we accept the new covenant by acknowledging the gifts given to us through the life and death of Jesus Christ? Will we live our lives sure in the knowledge that we have a personal, loving, redemptive relationship with God? Will we strive to not only wear our wedding robes, but to add to them the sparkle of the apostles' teaching and fellowship, the glitter of breaking bread and prayers? Will we embroider our robes with armor against evil? Will we stencil our robes with the good news of Jesus Christ? Will we rend our robes, tearing off strips to bind wounds in service to all persons with justice and in peace? Will we give our robes away to the poor and hopeless in respect of the dignity of every human being? And what about the man from the street? The man who was invited, equipped with the appropriate garment, yet appeared at the wedding unprepared. Who among us would like to arrive at the gates of heaven only to be rejected because we have talked the talk but have failed to walk the walk? Entrance to the kingdom of heaven requires complete commitment to Jesus. We have been issued the invitation. We have been appropriately equipped. All we need do is put on our robes, wear them as Jesus would, turn on our dot, and walk north on our line into the big dot at the center. Many are invited, few are chosen. Amen.